Hello, we are live. Welcome to the Juju Show number 19. I'm your host, Rick Harding from the Juju engineering team, and I'm here with Tim Van Steenberg. How are we doing, Tim?
Hey, everybody. Doing good. Thanks.
And Tim is sporting the wear of his team today. Kubernetes for the win, huh?
Yep, that's it.
There you go. Well, you can never mistake what team you belong to there. All right, cool. Well, let's just hop right into it. Make this short and sweet this week. Community news. We have a link to the weekly development summary of the Juju core team. Some call outs to be aware of. The team's preparing for the 2.2.3 bug fix release of the 2.2 tree. So watch out for that. And if you've got a chance to try that out, hopefully they'll have a release of an RC or something coming down the line to kind of get a hold of. But you can always go through and test it using the snaps or the source code itself or whatnot in the meantime. So get ready for some upgrades there. They also have some features, it looks like landing in here, some small features, including basically a support for bundles leveraging local resources. So if you have a bundle that uses a resource to run software or load some payload into the charm that's running, you'll be interested in this as a good way of doing development and testing and using a resource that you provide locally such that the bundle will deploy and pull that file along like it would a local charm, basically. So look for that. Some migration and upgrade fixes. So if you had any issues doing a Juju migration or a model upgrade in the 2.2 or earlier releases, some fixes in there for that. And machine placement directives ignoring constraints. This is basically the good old-fashioned Juju. If I tell you to put this application on that machine, don't ask me about constraints and stuff. Just do what I tell you, not what you think I mean. So some good stuff in there. And then 2.3 obviously keeps going forward. We've talked about some stuff in previous shows, particularly around some of the file storage features and some of the CrossModel Relations and a controller features. And then there's some work going on right now that's interesting for those of you. And I still see that there's a lot of you running 125 controllers out there. And 125 is the pre-2 version of Juju, which we used for a long time, but it's time to put that stuff to bed because 2 is so much better. So basically the team's working on allowing you to upgrade from that 1x to 2x. Unfortunately, there's some big challenges in there because there's a move from using LXC for the containers in 125 to LXD in 2.0. which means some kind of big shifts in that upgrade path. So, and then obviously going from single controller, single model in the 125 path to single controller multi-model in 2.0 means that there's a lot of upgrade foo to figure out. So the team's actively working on that. So if you are running 125 controllers, keep an eye out on the mailing list for news and calls to test and such. It would be really interesting to see, make sure that upgrade is going to be as solid as we can make it. Cool. Next up, the future of the charm review queue. Tim, you had an email to the list describing some process changes for how charms get to be the official charms, to grab the official names. Can you let us know what's changed there?
Yeah, so I'll paste a link in #Juju for the mailing list post that went out. The future of the review queue is that there is no future of the review queue, which I think most people will take as good news, since I think it's historically the review process has been objectively long and painful for folks, and it just took too long to get stuff through that review process. So we've kind of collectively decided to unblock that thing and get out of the way and kind of adopt a process more similar to what the Snap Store does, which is basically if you want the name in the top level namespace and it's available, then you can have it, and there's very little in the way of your getting your charm there. So basically, all you do now is post to the Juju mailing list and say, hey, here's my charm, and I would like it promulgated. And somebody in the Charmers Launchpad team will do some very minimal checks, like just make sure that charm proof passes and make sure that there's not a conflicting name in the top level that's already taken. And then push it up for you and make sure that you have permissions to push future revisions of that charm to the top level. Now, all that being said, I would also remind folks that there's absolutely nothing wrong with just using your namespace for your charms. So there's no technical reason to go for the top level. You know, it doesn't give you anything extra. In fact, the Kubernetes charms are like commercial production Kubernetes charms are still in the containers namespace. Sure, we might push them to top level eventually, but there's no compelling technical reason to do so. It's perfectly fine to run your stuff out of your namespace. So that's basically it. I don't know. So where we are in the process is we went through all the open reviews at review.jujucharms.com. We updated each one with a comment, basically summarizing what's in the mailing list post and with a link to the mailing list post saying, hey, the review queue is going away. There's no longer any reason to do the review. If you want your charm promulgated, just post to the mailing list. And then after commenting on each of those, we closed those reviews so that we got down to 0 open reviews. We have taken review.jujucharms.com offline. And the one little bit of housekeeping left to do is I have a list of about 8 pages in the official jujucharms.com/docs documentation that need to be updated slightly to reflect this new way of doing things. So that's it.
I want to come back to something you were talking about there about how you guys have handled this with the Kubernetes team and the charms and bundles that you guys operate, because I think that there's something to highlight there. You know, I hadn't thought about it, but you're 100% right that the charms themselves all lie in a team namespace. Basically, a team of folks can push changes and all that. There's no approval process. The team uses their own CI/CD infrastructure and all that. But I was like, well, wait a minute, because I don't type that team name in. But then I realized that's because I always interact with the bundles. I actually deploy the bundles, and the bundles themselves are promulgated. Like, they are in the short namespace. And those are interesting because they allow you to change the bundle over time in a nice, clean way without having to rename a bunch of stuff. And it also is very solution oriented, which I really like, rather than worrying about a particular charm. Like, you know, it's very rare that I go in and just deploy one thing and then that's it, I'm done. Typically, I'm trying to put together some kind of overall working solution of things. And so pushing forward and getting short names for the solution things or the bundles seems like a really good idea to me, like focusing on that end of it. And again, the users don't have to worry about where the charms themselves come from as much because they're trying to just get something done. It's like, actually, I really like, now that you mentioned that, I really like how you guys have set that up. I think that is a really good model, or give some folks some things to think about there.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally.
Well, speaking of this new process policy, I'll have a link in the show notes, but it looks like a charmer behind dokuwiki has already taken advantage of this. It looks like that was Adam Stokes has got a new dokuwiki charm promulgated, so you can now Juju deploy dokuwiki and get your wiki on. So that's good to see. And the next one I wanted to bring up was the Elasticsearch charm. So James Beattie has an updated Elasticsearch charm that he would like to get promulgated. Though the conflict here is that there is an existing Elasticsearch charm that is there. And so this brings up some of that complexity now. In order to do this, we have to figure out how to handle whether it should be moved, whether the folks should be kind of pushed to work together or whatnot. So what I will say is it looks like the current charm is owned by a team, which includes basically the charmers and a couple other people. And we'll have to look at whether or not they are still active and invested in this or not. It's really good to see that James is pushing forward. But at the same time, what I think might be useful would be if charms owned by groups, by teams that are managed by more than one person, I find more trustworthy, more active, more, it's just that's the communities that I want to be a part of, right? Where there's actually more than just a person running everything. And I would encourage James to kind of look at that and see whether or not that there's a group of folks that can kind of take some ownership there. On top of that, I think, don't we have Elasticsearch as part of the Beat stuff for the Kubernetes stack of things?
Yep.
Is that then so is there an existing Elasticsearch then in the containers team, or where is that taken care of from?
Well, now you've put me on the spot. I'll have to look.
See,
I don't remember.
I asked the hard, tough questions. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, while I'm looking for that, what I was kind of hoping to see on the thread that James started was for somebody from the existing group that owns the current top-level Elasticsearch charm chime in and say, well, just at least start a dialogue, like, well, we're not really maintaining this much anymore. Your charm looks like it's more up to date, so we would happily yield to your charm, and then maybe James Beatty could join that team that's kind of jointly maintaining that or something like that. But
yeah, well, I encourage the team to kind of get involved, or to be honest, get involved or get out of the way a little bit, and hopefully we'll get some dialogue kicking off there. But alrighty, well, that's the developer kind of charming changes in the community. So look forward to seeing where that leads us. All right, is everybody ready for some awesome demo time? If I can figure out how to work my windows, here we go. All right, so I'm going to screen share this image that I've put together. We're going to have a little bit of background. What has Rick been playing with? So for the last couple of days, I have been told by the Juju engineering team that CrossModel Relations that I talked about a couple episodes ago and did a blog post on has some updates and some bug fixes and is better than when I last tested it. So I was encouraged to go play with it some more. So that's what I did. I went and played with it some more. And the key thing here is I'm told that it works with subordinates. Subordinates are really useful for a lot of applications such as monitoring, alerting, all that kind of stuff, as well as ensuring things conform properly, like there's subordinates for security hardening and other kind of purposes. And I'm sure there's some more I'm blanking on at the moment. But basically, there's a lot of I want to do something across a lot of other things. That's where subordinates come into play. And so what I decided to put together and try to do is I installed Kubernetes in GCE. This map that I've got here is the map from GCE from their regions. So I deployed one of them in the US East 1 region, and I deployed another Kubernetes in the Europe West 2 region. So I have identical Kubernetes, but I'm running them, let's say, workloads in the Europe and workloads in the US. Now, I want to monitor my Kubernetes. I want to make sure that they stay up and running, that I'm responding to load or whatever I need to do. So to do that, there's the Charms Telegraph, which will do system monitoring out of the box, as well as picking up other things. But I'm just using it to watch the machines. I want to ship that data from Telegraph locally in each region to a Prometheus running in AWS on the AWS West Coast region. So I've got 2 regions in Google and a second cloud involved. I'm trying to do this all with the current charms in the store with relations and model it all properly and do, awesome operation stuff. So I have done so. Let me switch over to my other laptop where I have my command line and everything. So I have proof is in the pudding. I have a blog post that I'll link to in the bottom here about how to get the letest development kind of daily snapshot from the Snap Store. Basically, you run. Let's try this. Snap refresh. This command, snap refresh edge Juju, goes and gets me the latest greatest Juju. So you can see my Juju now from the snap is this 2.3 alpha 1, which is the next target that the team is working towards. And what I've done is I've got 3 controllers. So I have bootstrapped an east workloads, in EU West workloads. And then I've got basically a West NOC. This is where my monitoring will be. So if I Juju models those, -C East workloads, basically you'll see my US Kubernetes model, and then I've got West workloads. And these are just straight up. I did use the smaller Kubernetes model just to kind of keep things clean and simple, just a couple things in here. So I use the Kubernetes core bundle instead of the canonical Kubernetes one. And that was just to keep things smaller and lighter and all that. So then here's my EU K8 model. And we can now look at my models-C in my West NOC. So in my operations center, I am going to monitor things. I have a Big Brother model here. So let's go switch to that. And if I run Juju status here, we're going to see a couple things here. So here's my West NOC. It's an AWS US West, my 2.3 alpha. I have just two things deployed here. I've got Grafana for visuals and Prometheus for the data collecting. One of each kind of deployed in here. And this is what's the interesting thing here. So I've got this offer section. What this offer section is telling me is I have gone through and done, not list offers. I offered the Prometheus target endpoint of my application out. Okay, what that means is that other models can relate to Prometheus on the target endpoint and only that endpoint, right? So I don't want to expose out to other models the admin endpoint or the super secret password endpoint or anything, just the target one so people can target stuff in. And now if I go switch over and look at one of these Kubernetes models, let's go switch to the US one because I'm US biased. East workloads and Juju status here. It's a little bit busier because we got more stuff running here. So again, my US K8 model running in Google US East. Notice here there's this SaaS thing. So it's not an application, but basically there's this software I'm relying on as a service. And I called it the Big Brother Prometheus SaaS. That's the name of it that I gave it when I brought it in. And here's the URL to where it is. It's in that other controller in the Big Brother model on the Prometheus application. Now, I cheated here a little bit. This works with multiple users. The rule is that if a user wants to relate to an endpoint in another controller somewhere, they have to have a user account there right now. Okay, so there's no, I'm going to set this up and anyone in the world can come and connect to it and relate to it and feed data into my Prometheus or whatever. It's very much only people that I have, created accounts for. They have to be authenticated. They have to have permission, ACL access to things. I've done this all with admin across the board, and I'm logged in as admin on all these controllers just to kind of, again, simplify how many steps to kind of show this off. And so here you can see I've got Telegraph on my Kubernetes master, Telegraph on my Kubernetes worker, the two machines here, machine 0 and 1, and they're all feeding data across the way. And so my kind of ta-da, let's see here, where's my Chrome browser? Ah, that's not the one I wanted. My other Chrome browser. Come on. What am I? Shoot. Can you tell I normally do my tiling fun? Here we go. So here's where I have, and this is running in my West NOC model in AWS. I have loaded Grafana to pull the CPU data. Notice here it says Kubernetes master, and this is Kubernetes worker. So I am pulling the CPU and memory usage information for my running Kubernetes models in each GCE region. So this is, they've been running, you can kind of get an idea for how long I've had this running for. So let's go to today so far. So you can see I re-kicked this off, in my morning, a little before 10 o'clock. So kind of cool. What would you use it for? There's definitely a few things you could use it for. One thing that's really cool is obviously you can use it for monitoring. One of the things that I think is really interesting here is folks often ask about trying to do auto scaling in a Kubernetes case, I could definitely see a case for scaling out the Kubernetes worker units in different models, depending on load. And again, with tools like the Juju lib Python library client, you could easily do things like set alerts or alarms in your Grafana dashboard based on conditions that could trigger Python scripts to go forth and scale things out in different models in different regions of the world really well. Another cool use case, let me grab my link here. Link. Is I was looking at this blog post, and I want to give this a shot sometime. But basically, Google's got a really good document on their cloud on creating a cross-region load balancing. So you can see this being really useful for something like having a single front-end endpoint that load balanced based on different conditions, geography, load, or whatnot across different regions. The other thing you can easily see would be using this for a database replication, where you could actually replicate out the Postgres, have the wall shipped off to another running Postgres in another cloud, another region, using the normal relation that's already there on the Postgres charm today, and giving you really great failover situation. Everything's up and running, data's up and as close to live as you're going to get it, and you're just a DNS change away, basically, from migrating from one cloud or one region to another. What do you think, Tim? You find some uses for it?
Yeah, it's super cool. I think we already have some external customers or users of our Kubernetes that will find this valuable for like situations where they're deploying multiple clusters, and they, you don't want, like your example here, you don't want to have a monitoring unit for every cluster that you deploy. You just want one, so you can keep an eye on everything at the same time, regardless of what cloud they're in, whatever. So one question I had was, you used the term endpoint, which is not a term that I'm used to hearing with Juju. Is that just the name of the relation that you're exposing, or what? Can you explain it?
So when you look at Juju and the charms and you define relations, what you're actually defining is it's called an endpoint, right? So these things talk over across a relation, and one end of it is the actual endpoint. And so when you offer something out for a potential to be able to be related to by someone in another model or another controller, is you're offering the endpoint out. You're not offering the application, because an application may have 4 or 5 different relation endpoints available, right? And so it's not the relation itself. The relation is the connectivity, the modeling of these two things are connected across their endpoints. And each charm has a different thing on that, right? So there's an HTTP proxy endpoint. There's an HTTP caching endpoint. There's there's different endpoints for different uses. And so you may well expose out one thing, but not all of them or others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So what you're saying is, if I go look at the Prometheus charm, I will find that it provides a target relation, and that's what.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And it's got a few different endpoints that it can. If I could spell Prometheus properly and find it. Let me see if I can get this up here. So here, let me share this back out again. So here you can see I'm looking at the Prometheus charm details page in this relations section here. And come here, zoom in. You can see we have an NMP exporter, the target, which is the one we used. There's scrape, Grafana source website. I mean, there's a number of these here, and I wouldn't want to offer all these up for external use. Only certain ones that I'm prepared to work with and deal with. Gotcha. Thanks. But yeah, so what the engineering team is asking for is for folks to try this out and test it out. I will have some notes in the show notes here. I've got a blog post of the step-by-step what I did, kind of command by command, how I set this up. Basically, it's a lot like the other CrossModel post I did, where you export out the feature flag, bootstrap your controllers. And then what's really nice is that it's a lot like just using Juju the way it is. You deploy things, you configure them, you relate them. The only thing is that the relate commands are a little more interesting because they can be things not in your model. So they have more parts to the identity of what it is you're relating to. And the best thing of all is that charms don't have to be aware to deal with this at all, right? The charms already know how to speak across endpoints when they have a relation constructed there. They're all good. So there's no changes that a charm author has to make to be able to support this. It's all just in Juju itself. Juju will do the work to enable and make sure that the two models are able to communicate together and pass information that needs to be passed around. And that gets us to where there's still some work in progress. So the demo's awesome. I had a cheat in one spot. And that one spot was when I related my telegraph to my Prometheus target, it grabbed the wrong IP address. It grabbed the 10.internal IP address and sent that to Prometheus, who then couldn't connect back to Telegraph with that 10. Address because it was going from AWS to GCE, and it didn't know how to make heads or tails with that 10. Address. So I went into Prometheus and edited out and put the public address in there. Juju's supposed to take care of that for you. I think that's like either a bug that's, I know I've talked to the team about it, so it may be that hasn't landed yet, or they haven't gotten to that part yet. What I should do more testing on is seeing, was it a subordinate issue? Is it the cloud issue? It may work in some conditions and not others. So, if you're doing Apache and you're putting it behind, relating across a model to an HA proxy or something, maybe that one will work fine. I don't know yet. So there's some stuff to test out there, file some bugs, provide feedback to the team. I've got a couple of usability bugs from putting this together over the last couple of days that I know I'll definitely be filing to help make it a little bit smoother and more copy and paste friendly for users. But look for that coming in the near future. So I think as far as release target stuff, the team is definitely focused on cross-model relations inside of a single controller for 2.3. I think this across controller stuff will probably be after that. But don't quote me on that because a lot of it just depends on how well testing goes and how it works out in practice. So go try it out, provide the feedback, engage with the team, and hopefully this is something that a lot of folks can find a really good way to use Juju, the modeling language, to more fully express their whole infrastructure, not just some little part of it. I feel like we've kind of moving up the layers, right? Juju 1 had one model and Juju 2 had multiple models. Now we've got multiple models in multiple regions. Now we've got multiple across those models and getting across those into cross cloud. And so it's really getting impressive how far out we can take these ideas.
Yep, cool. Cross planet will be next, and then cross galaxy.
Oh man, I thought the latency was bad getting from Australia and back. All right, well, I think that will wrap it up. You have anything else you want to promote or plug or anything, Tim?
Oh, I do, but put me on the schedule for next time.
Next time. All righty then. Well then, next time, everyone have a good time. Get your Juju on.